Today's guest is Jennifer Clark. If you haven't heard the news, Jennifer was promoted to St. Vincent de Paul, Louisville's Chief Executive Officer, Executive Director, upon my retirement back in July. I served in that role since, January 2022. Upon retirement, I'm going to continue to host the podcast and support St. Vincent de Paul in an advocacy role, newly created advocacy role. Is going to allow me to spend more time in the community, growing partnerships in the community, government engagement, and other sorts of advocacy for St. Vincent de Paul. I have to say that I'm extremely excited for this opportunity, and really even more excited for Jennifer to step into my former role. And I'm looking forward to a very smooth transition between us. We've been working very closely together for the last 2.5 years or so. So Jennifer's going to serve as the first female leader in the organization's 170-year history. So we're making history here with this change as well. Jennifer joined in 2017 and has served as the Chief Operating Officer since 2021. Jennifer has extensive experience in providing housing alternatives for our community, including emergency shelter, transitional shelter, and permanent supportive housing. That, quite frankly, prevents and ends homelessness for so many and provides lots of hope, literally saving lives each and every day. Jennifer is a graduate of the University of Louisville and obtained a Master of Science in Business Communication from Spalding University. This is an emotional one for me. We've enjoyed pretty intense time together since January 2022, making a lot of changes. I consider Jennifer a dear friend, and I couldn't be happier for her to jump into this role. And looking forward to talking to you. Hello, Jennifer.
Hey,
Thanks for joining.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the lovely introduction.
Well, yeah, it's all true, and even more so, right? And hey, look, before we talk about the leadership transition and dive more into that and to St. Vincent de Paul, it'd be great for you to spend some time on your personal story, how you ended up in the nonprofit world, specifically SVDP, but also, you've got a number of years out there as well in other nonprofits and governmental entities. Uh, and why housing?
Yeah. So I started volunteering at a pretty young age as a kid. Really grateful for that experience. And I think that's where my exposure to and love of nonprofits started, was through volunteering. When I got to the University of Louisville in undergrad, I really went deep with it in Louisville. I did like 900 hours of community
Hmm.
service through a program called the Bonner Scholars. And it was an AmeriCorps and Bonner Scholars collaboration. So it was a big service learning project, and I worked with ElderServe locally and a few other projects, Dress for Success. And then when my undergrad career was wrapping up, I got a position managing a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grant for active living and healthy eating that was tied to housing development in Louisville. It was a partnership between a lot of city departments and a few nonprofit partners. And so that made a really big impression on me and started my network here in Louisville. And so in 2008, when the recession hit, I moved over to Louisville Metro government and started managing the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing grants with the team over there, really focused on compliance. And then I was kind of off to the races with grants management, but specifically with a HUD focus. And then I went to Family and Children's Place, where I served as a director of programs for about 5 years there, um, with a program they had housing people. And then that program came to an end, and I moved over to St. Vincent de Paul. And I think that housing has always been something that, for my entire career, once I started down that path, I was super passionate about it. I don't know how many other issues, probably a lot of them if you really get talking to people, but for me, housing is that issue that just intersects with every system. You've got people with a lot of justice department involvement, you've got education, you've got different things happening that people just can't be successful without housing. So for me, it just felt like this is the most important thing, and everybody's got their most important thing and why they think it's their most important thing. For me, housing is the most important thing for people, and I'm really grateful and really humbled that I've been able to spend so much time on that issue in Louisville and see so much. And I'm really proud of what St. Vincent de Paul does related to housing.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I mean, you think about it, you think about our community and the most important issues that we have, certainly public safety is one of those. But housing is, either number one, number two, doesn't really matter. It's way up there and it all ties into public safety as well. I mean, it ties to your point, it ties into healthcare. Housing is healthcare as well.
It
And we,
is, yeah.
and we, yeah, and we know that, right? And so, the work that we're doing at St. Vincent de Paul and that you're going to be leading into the future is, as I said in the opening, literally saving people's lives, in addition to providing hope. And it's just a tough environment. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but it's a tough time out there for a lot of folks. And I know for myself, uh, you know, being excited about the new role that I'm going to venture into is important to me because uh, I, quite frankly, since 2022, since I joined, I've made about a 180-degree shift in my thinking about this, and part of it's just because I've learned more and have seen things that I hadn't seen before, and you've taught me a lot, of course, as well. The team at St. Vincent de Paul has, but the reality of what folks are facing, even in our community, that is just not seen by, quite frankly, I think a majority of the folks in our community, is nothing short of shocking, and it couldn't be a better time for us to do even more and to advocate more and to tell the story in the places where it's not being told and where it may be misunderstood or there may be fixed perceptions or fixed positions that can be softened, with reality. And my hope and prayer is that the community that we're able to do that even more, and not do it in a way that it's a secret, right?
Yeah.
And you know this, right? When folks come on our campus, I mean, everyone is kind of shocked. Wow, I didn't realize that you did that. I didn't realize 300 folks on campus, 150 folks off campus, that you're helping. Didn't know that kind of thing. And so that's why I'm excited about the new role and for us to be able to kind of do the things that we're doing and you to be in that happy place of serving those in need with housing, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the right time. And it's a time when any organization recognizes too that, look, you got to continue to change. You got to continue to evolve with the needs. And we've done that with some of our programming, and you've led that in terms of trying to put the resources and the best resources in the right places to be of most use to folks in the community. So I commend you on that. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of your thoughts about going forward and share with our listeners more on that in a few minutes here. But I do want to talk about the transition because I know transitions can be difficult, but we've been kind of working it here for a while, and I feel this at the in my heart that it's going to be a great transition, and it's already started, and it started even before we started it, kind of thing. I, how excited are you about the new role and the transition and moving into this and being, you know, we think a lot at St. Vincent de Paul about inclusion and diversity and equity and all those things and they mean a lot to us as an organization. What do you feel and how excited are you about the transition?
I am really excited. I'm excited to grow more. I'm excited to represent the work that St. Vincent de Paul does and that our team does because I think they're amazing. And I think that's ultimately what a good leader does is represent the amazing work that their team is doing. Transitions are difficult. And, the previous executive director, Ed Narowski, who is also a great friend and mentor to me, um, he was here for 15 years and a lot of people were and when he retired. So He brought a long period of stability with that leadership. So there was bound to be a big shift and a lot of change when he left, because that's just how things go, I think, with new leadership, and they should go because there are opportunities there, right? So I think when you came in with your skill set and your experience and everything you know about Louisville generally, it was such a asset to St. Vincent de Paul and to me personally. Really have enjoyed working with you, and I think that you, in your time as the role of CEO, you started a big transition for this organization, that now I want to continue and carry forward and help the organization work through to get to a place where we're very stable and we're sustainable, and it's a great place to work, and it provides quality services and housing to the community. And so that's my number one goal, is to really make sure that we can get through this big transition that we have to have, that we have to make, because we've seen a lot of turnover with the leadership change. We've learned a lot with the leadership change. We have a new set of leaders who have a lot of energy and a lot of ideas, and we need all of that, because the reality is you can't stay stagnant as an organization forever. And you need to adjust to the changing needs of the community, and just make changes. And so we're doing that. And I think it's going to be good for the people who work here, the people that we serve, and for the community generally, to make those changes and to come through on the other side. So I'm really excited about being part of that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think you're singularly, this is a mutual respect session here, and I think you're singularly qualified and skilled and have abilities that are going to come to bear at the right time. Because to your point, transition and changes are difficult. Let's talk about that a little bit in terms of, and I'm not going to just give the typical, hey, what's the first 100 days look like? Because it is what it is. It's going to be an evolving thing. But with that said, what do you see as some of the initial focuses as you transition into the role? What you're going to be focusing on, and are there a few? We talk about changes. Can you give some examples of some of those for our listeners that you're thinking through, without divulging
Yeah,
anything that we can't, it's confidential or anything like that, of course. But
sure. Yeah. So, you know, um, St. Vincent de Paul is definitely facing some financial headwinds, which I think is true in a lot of the community. This economy, generally, big picture wise, has just been a roller coaster, and we've experienced that. We've experienced the massive inflation. We've experienced the challenges that a lot of nonprofits in Louisville are having. So I came in right at the beginning of both our budget process for the next fiscal year, as well as the beginning of our strategic planning process for
mm,
the next 5 years. So I think that working with the team, number one, to get the structure of the organization resettled, because there will be some changes to direct reports and to what people do. And so we need to work through that as a team. And that's something, my leadership style, I'm very transparent. I communicate a lot. I seek a lot of input. So I'm not going to make those changes right off the bat, but I am going to talk to the team and try and figure out, what makes the most sense to go where, just in terms of how we function and how we operate. And then moving into the strategic planning process, looking at what the next 5 years looks like for St. Vincent de Paul. And I'm really excited about the kind of nerdy stuff that comes along with that, the gap analysis, the
yeah,
SWOT, which is the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. I love that kind of stuff. I love the big picture, kind of figuring it all out and getting all the pieces together, and then putting them and making this beautiful picture out of a bunch of puzzle pieces that reflect the next 5 years of work. And so I think that those things are going to be a focus for a while, probably for the rest of this quarter, is just getting through the budget, starting the strategic planning process, and making sure that the structure of the organization is where it needs to be.
yeah, that's great, and I'm glad to hear that. So I mean, folks, again, as they get to know us better, and they see the programs that we have, they realize what a complex organization it is, and it's a complex organization that you're inheriting as CEO. And I was in public accounting with large firms for almost 37 years, and I've I've never had a more difficult role. It's hard, and it's hard to, and I just hope and pray that too, that folks start to realize and see more about the role that not-for-profits that are actually providing services like ours, how important those are to the community. Because you can imagine, you can ask the question, what would it look like if we didn't exist?
Yep.
Where would those families be? Where would those children be? Where would the moms and dads and the individuals be? Well, they'd be on the street. And in some cases, unfortunately, they may not make it. And it's a reality. And it's a reality that I never thought about before. And so thinking about how this works and the complexity of it is that, you have the support from the government. We have the support, from our retail operations, although that's really more of a friend maker than anything else. But, the proceeds from that do support our mission. You have the generosity of the community. And again, that also, you talk about inflation, you talk about the economy, and now there's talk about, we're sitting here on August 7th, there's talk of a recession. Um, there's lots of headwinds, but there's also headwinds in philanthropy. I mean, we're seeing that is a stressed area as well, and folks aren't given like they used to, and all the different generations give in different ways. And so, man, it's tough. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. And having a great board of directors, and you mentioned the team, and I've personally gotten to know this team because the team has
Mhm.
come from within. I mean, there's been some outside hires, but there's a lot of folks in this organization that have so much talent. And, we've had them on the podcast in the past before as well. We should probably think about continuing to do that every so often,
Yeah.
showcasing to the community this wonderful team that you have, and the support that we have with the great leaders that we do have. So yeah, it's pretty excited about the new 5 year strategic plan and what that's going to hold. Um,
I think it's easy to take a organization like St. Vincent de Paul for granted. We've been here 170 years. We've been doing that work for 170 years. And over that time, we've kind of just taken on more and more and more, and we've expanded and we've grown, and it's been amazing. And some of the things that we've grown into are things that are definitely complicated to manage, like the housing. You think about what St. Vincent de Paul does, and we've got a retail operation. We do property management, we do maintenance, we do case management, we do mental health and substance use counseling, we serve kids, we serve people fleeing domestic violence, we run an emergency shelter, and we do all of that on with an incredibly lean team. And so I think that it's hard for the community to understand what it takes to maintain an organization like that and the investment that it takes. And I also feel like, especially, I think this comes from my elder millennial heart. You know, they keep telling us that we're living in unprecedented times, and we're really tired of that. But there's a reality there that things have not, in my lifetime, have not necessarily gotten easier for people or better. Homelessness, it's kind of gone up and down, but for the most part, we're not seeing less of it. People continue to be very challenged. It's hard to get above that poverty line working a full-time job. And the smallest thing can just send you into a place where, especially if your friends and family and your social network all work the jobs that don't pay enough to live. You can be in a place where you really have nowhere to go. And that's always felt wrong to me. I feel like a community should have enough housing for people and should be able to give everyone a basic level of decency and respect, and treat
yeah,
people with dignity and compassion. And that's what we say we do as a city. Well, what does it take to really do that? St. Vincent de Paul went out of business tomorrow, there'd be hundreds of people on the street if we went away tomorrow. And I know that people really struggle with how visible homelessness has become. It's not a new problem. People have been living this way for a long time, and it's not okay. But the investment that it takes to be able to really end that problem, it's a lot. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think what happens sometimes with that is the community and donors and people who would support us, it's easy to tune out because you can just feel I talked about how things haven't gotten easier in my lifetime. It's really easy to feel like there's not a lot of hope out there, and that you're just, you give and you give and you give. And what happens? You don't end homelessness. You're lucky if you build more housing. with your tax dollars and your donations and this, that, and the other thing. But the reality is that without that support from the community, it would be much worse. The economic impact that St. Vincent de Paul has in terms of housing people is incredible. And what we do with what we have is incredible when you step back and you look at it and you really think about what we're doing. And we help people rebuild their lives, and not everybody stays with us forever. We have people who move on and buy homes and raise their kids and get better jobs and work really hard, and they couldn't have done that without the support of St. Vincent de Paul and our case management. So I think that people just need to understand what it takes to maintain an organization like this and how much investment is really needed. And if you want that for your community, if you want housing, if you want people to be fed, you have to support St. Vincent de Paul. So, but it's challenging, no doubt.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we see it every day, right?
Mhm.
See it every day. And let's talk about, I mean, you're talking about the folks on the street and how challenging it is for folks. And you know, again, I wish we could go out of business because there's no demand, right? We know that's not the
Absolutely.
case. We know it's not going to happen. But what do you see as, I mean, if you were to think of the one or two or three main challenges that, those that are unhoused and our neighbors that are unhoused in our community, what are those main challenges that, that they see every day?
In some ways, the challenges that people have without housing are the same challenges that everyone has every day. It's getting your needs met. So I think that it just takes on a different level of stress and trauma for people when they have to actually realize that they have nowhere else to go. So everybody, if you've heard one story from someone who's lost their housing, you've heard one story. And at the end of the day, people need that support to be able to get back on their feet. And a lot of us are one paycheck away from being there.
Mm,
I think that if you've been lucky enough to always have electricity, always have plumbing, always have easy access to a refrigerator, your medication, a way to charge your phone, that it's really easy to not totally understand what people are going through. But at the same time, I think everybody in their life has struggled with something. So if you think about that time that your car broke down, you didn't have anybody to call, or, if you've been hungry or if you had your lights turned out, like imagine how hard that would be if that was sort of the straw that broke the
mm,
camel's back for you personally, and you ended up with nowhere to go. And then you had to, whatever that concern was, it just becomes like an ongoing, almost permanent concern, which is like, how am I going to charge my phone? How am I going to feed myself? And you really can't, until you have housing, you really can't, you have to take every day, one day at a time in a way that is really hard and causes a lot of things to go on the back burner, your physical health, your mental health. A lot of people, they get on the street and substance use becomes more of an issue. And some of that is just self-medication for being in a really, really hard place in a really tough circumstance. And who among us has not either done that or known someone who has?
right.
So in some ways, I think that the people who don't have housing, they have a lot of the same challenges that everyone has. And then it's just the level of difficulty is just so much more, right? But I think that people can get there and empathize with what it would be like if they've never experienced that, just by thinking through some of their own hard times that they've had. And what would you do if you just didn't have anywhere to go tomorrow?
Yeah, or if you didn't have, the relationships to help you. I mean, I think, we can all think of a family member or a family friend, somebody that's out there that for whatever reason finds themselves unhoused and doesn't have that social network or that relationship richness to be able to save them, kind of thing.
Yeah,
We all
yeah.
know that, right? And that's why I think let's talk a little bit about myths. Um, I've learned some things, I mean, what is the biggest myth out there, or the thing that just is not true about the unhoused population that we serve? And I'm thinking about, because everyone thinks, well, 90% of all the folks that are on the street are probably addicted or mentally ill, and we got the stats. We know what those are. I mean, can you talk to that a little bit? Because I think breaking down those myths starts to help you create, and and I pray that we can do this, empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, mental health and substance use is real. Mental health and substance use looks different when you can't access your medication, when it's easier to find illegal drugs than the ones that help keep you stable. Um, and then, so I think that the mental health and substance use issues, they're there, but they're there for anywhere in our community at any income level. It's just that difference again of not having anywhere to go. But the number one myth and sort of thing that I find myself refuting, and it's always been this way, is the whole there are people who want to be homeless. And I hear this all the time. And I hear it from people of all different political backgrounds and all they think about it all in a very, very different ways, but it comes back to some people make that choice. And so the thing that I always like to say when people bring that up is I'm just like, why do they choose to do that? Like really think about that. Why would someone decide that they would rather be in a tent with no electricity, no water, no toilet, no way to refrigerate their food, and being completely dependent on other people in some form or fashion? I mean, we all are, but really being dependent on someone every day for all of your needs, to have to go find food, to have to panhandle, to have to do all of that. What's going on with our community that seems like a better option than going to work a full-time job? And a lot of people who don't have housing are working.
Hmm.
And I think there's a reality there if people are like, I lost my housing. I got to a place where I'm comfortable on the street in this life that I've carved out for myself. And I know I can do this. Whereas going back into an apartment, I don't know if I can continue to afford it. I don't know if I can function the way that I need to in that apartment. I don't have the support. I don't have the resources. So I think people need to understand what's behind that statement, because I think people also have interactions with people who are unhoused and they hear that from people who are unhoused. Like, I choose to be homeless. And so you really have to pick that apart and go a little bit deeper before assuming that you really know what that means.
Right.
It's not that people don't need or want housing. We need more housing, and we need housing that's affordable, and people need a living wage. There's all kinds of structural things that go behind why we have so much homelessness. And none of it has anything to do with people genuinely not wanting housing.
It's interesting. That's great. Thank you for that. And I comment a bit on also, one of the things we didn't touch on in terms of what we do at St. Vincent de Paul is, and a lot of folks don't realize this, but we're a lay organization. We're not a part of the Archdiocese. Clearly, there's a 170-year history of being tied into Catholic social justice, but it's made up of lay people, many whom work at St. Vincent de Paul that are not Catholic, but believe in the mission and believe in the reasons why we're here. But we also have a lot of parishes. I think there's 27 today that are in the business of helping folks stay housed. I mean, we're in the business of getting folks off the street and stable, but we're also in the business of trying to prevent that. Can you talk to the work that the conferences do on a daily basis?
Yeah, so the volunteers at the parish level that make up the conferences, which a lot of times when I'm talking to people who maybe don't know, it's like the community ministries just in the Catholic community. So providing funding for rent and different types of assistance. And that's where St. Vincent de Paul comes from. That is the original work and the beginning of the mission. And it's a beautiful history. It's a beautiful story. And I'm really excited about carrying on that legacy, because conferences, the volunteers, they started the kitchen, they started our emergency shelter, they're on our board, they're the backbone of our organization in a lot of ways. And so where they come from it's very important. It's a beautiful history, and I'm really excited about being more involved with that. I'm one of those who's not Catholic, and who came into this mission, and I really have grown to appreciate how people bring their faith to this job and how much it impacts the volunteers. It's I mean, it just really is a beautiful thing to witness. So the conferences are incredibly important, and I'm really looking forward to being more involved on that side of things with St. Vincent de Paul.
No, that's great. It'd be great to even get more parishes to, be involved as well, because it's the work is very clear. I mean, last year, just so our listeners know, the conferences provided about $1.5 million of assistance to folks across our community. Again, basically keeping people housed and in their jobs. You talk about faith. How has your own personal faith influenced your work and your desire to help people in need?
I've always said that I feel like I was called to work at St. Vincent de Paul, and I still feel that, and I'll continue to be here as long as I feel that. So I really consider this work my faith in action, and it definitely drives why I do this. I could be any one of us could be anywhere doing anything, but there's
Yep.
something about being part of something that's bigger than yourself, and that really has such an incredible purpose and impact on the community and on individual lives. And so to me, that's a great testament to something bigger than ourselves, and to people being able to live that, and they can come from any walk of life and still be called to this work. I think anybody who comes here and spends any amount of time will tell you that it has a sacredness to it on some level, where you are part of something that is um, truly impacting individual lives, saving lives on a daily basis. And it's just a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I, so I was reading recently about I can't remember how many there are. Maybe it's seven corporal acts of mercy, and they're pretty simple things: housing, feeding, clothing,
Yeah.
visiting the sick, burying the dead, visiting those incarcerated. And and it could be in your own family, it can be in your community, it can be, anything. And it really hit home for me what you just said, because that's what we're doing every day. There's the corporal acts of mercy,
Yeah.
for those
Yeah.
in need. And, you know, pretty cool. You can do that at
It's very
work.
cool. It's very
That your work,
rewarding.
that your work, that your work
Yeah.
does that.
That you get to do that for 8
Yeah.
hours a day. I mean, when you think about it that way, you realize what a privilege it is, to be able to spend your time doing that. And I definitely feel that way about my career, that I've been lucky enough to continue to stay involved in things that really benefit a larger group. And I think that you do get called to it, and people feel that when they work here. They feel that they're connecting to something bigger than themselves, and whatever that looks like for people, I just don't think you can work here and not feel that.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, this has been great. I appreciate your time. We're going to continue to work together, and I do look forward to hosting some of your team on a future session. I want to end with just one last question or desire for your comment. You continue on this journey of an amazing career in the nonprofit world. There's so much that you're going to accomplish in the years ahead. What advice would you give those that would like to work kind of in an organization like ours, uh, whether they're doing it like I did it later in life
Mhm.
or maybe at the beginning of a career?
I think you gotta figure out why you're doing it, and you've got to hold that really close. I think that one of the most powerful things for me, and one of the things that keeps me coming back to this work, is that when you do it, you realize that you can't take anything for granted in your life, and it's a constant daily reminder. It's easy to get into the grind of things. Even working here, it's easy to kind of just get in a routine, and you forget what you're doing and why you're doing it. And especially, if you're fortunate enough to advance in your career, the reality is, like, I'm further and further away from the people that we serve in some ways. Like, I spend a lot of time thinking through insurance and the
Yeah.
budget and the strategic planning. Then it's like, where are the people that we're feeding every day and we're housing? And it's another reason that St. Vincent de Paul is so attractive to me and why I've always felt so fulfilled here is because when you can see it on our campus. So even if that's what I have to do every day in terms of like not really being connected to the direct service anymore, when I walk outside or I look outside my window, I still see the people that we help and I still get to engage with them. And that's hugely important. So I think anybody who wants to go into nonprofit work, it's not easy, it's hard, and you have to understand why you want to do it and then really kind of keep that in mind as you move forward.
Well, it's a wonderful way for us to end our chat today with that great advice for folks. Looking forward to continue to work with you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.